Can you believe it? We have only got one more episode of Montag Night Raw to review 2021. So join me as we stare off into the distance and just have a lovely little walk down memory lane. Of course, we're not going to do that, you absolute buffoon, because if we did, we'd have to go back to that point when The Miz got eaten by a zombie. I don't want to do that. So we're not doing this. But instead, I'm going to say hello, my name is Simon WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. And it is time to forget about the future and focus on the present, which is the most recent episode of Monday Night Raw. But was it any good or did it suck? Balls. Hope my mum doesn't watch this. Let's up those downs. Top babyface Bobby Lashley kicked off Raw this week because seriously, last week he just murdered 3 top superstars as if it was nothing. Who is more cool and who is more badass than Bobby Lashley? He was here with MVP, who started to say, you fans all suck because you ain't like Bobby Lashley. When of course Bobby Lashley and MVP got interrupted by Kevin Owens. I say Kevin Owens, I meant Big E. Put your hands up if you are very, very excited about the interruption counter in 2022. My hand stays up because it actually could reach 1,000. Bless Big E as well, because he even mentioned Bobby Lashley's sisters during this promo. Although now it has been said, let us never mention it again. And his whole point was, well, yeah, you're walking around here like your big bad Bobby Lashley, but really without MVP, you couldn't do nothing because last week he interfered, and that's the only reason you won. There was some nonsense about MVP actually fighting Big E because Bobby Lashley told him to, and we'll talk about that in one just second, because of course, as soon as that did happen, who interrupted? It was Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. Look at me, look how excited I am. The interruption counter is going to make my life. Newsflash 2, I love Rollins and Owens together. They are such a good team because they're both such wonderful assholes. And once again, for the second week in a row, they were fought off by Big E and Bobby Lashley working together. And I was like, flub me oodalally. Because we should turn Bob face, and I think that is what we're doing. Because not only did we tease it here, not only did we tease it throughout the entire evening, but yes, I just told you about all that stuff with MVP. Now, in a perfect world, we wouldn't break those two up. They could just turn together. But this is what we have to do, so hell, however we have to get there, I'm on board. So all of this was fine. I mean, it was just the opening to WWE Raw, which is always the damn same. And you are a little bit like, why don't we ever change it? I don't understand. But these 5 guys, include MVP, kick all the ass up. Sarah Schreiber then told Bianca Belair that a lot of people were saying that her upcoming match with Dewdrop was being billed as the final counter, or the final chapter. I was like, no, it's not. Most people are going, oh no, not another rematch. Fair play to Belair though, because she called out all this BS and said, no, actually nobody is saying that. It's just coming from Dewdrop. But yes, they're going to fight for the 7,222nd time later tonight. And now I'm just going to do it. I've been wanting to do this for ages, and it's the holiday time, it's Christmas, it's Xmas, and we should give ourselves a gift. So we went backstage to Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, and as a pairing, as a duo, I'm giving them it up. Because they just bring me so much joy. Like, they were bickering and arguing in the back like they were children, and Kevin Owens even dropped the line that Bobby Lashley was some kind of jacked up Benjamin Button because he doesn't age, and that made me laugh. When Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce arrived, and everybody, bar Seth Rollins, could see where this is going, because they said later tonight, you're gonna have to coexist as a team and take on Bobby Lashley and Big E. And Kevin Owens was like, oh, I knew it. I could see it coming a mile away. And Seth Rollins lost his damn mind. Because again, together, they make me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum, especially because Seth Rollins was dressed like some kind of weird candy. It was then Bianca Belair versus Dewdrop, and good grief, we have had this a lot over the last few weeks, and it's not really anything to write home about. You're not gonna go, dear parents, I just watched Bianca Belair versus Dewdrop, and it made me feel really good. It was fine, it did its job, but the whole point is that Bianca Belair finally hit the KOD onto the drop, and that looked so good. WWE has to run it in video packages for Bianca Belair until the end of time. She got the 1, 2, 3, and now hopefully, we can just move on to something else. So based on the finish alone, up. I then think, and I could be wrong, I mean, look at me, I'm an absolute moron, that we hinted if Austin Theory loses a match, he could be murdered. What? Because he was being interviewed by Kevin Patrick, who wanted to know what it was like to be hanging out with Vince McMahon. Austin Theory was like, oh, it's the best thing ever. It feels like my birthday every single day. And when he went off to have his match with Finn Balor, KP went, well, I hope you don't lose. And yeah, he said it in a way that he knew a defeat would probably mean the end of the life of Austin Theory. This should be what reality shows do as well, as a quick aside. Like, if you're on American Idol, I don't mean if you lose, you get killed, but you should be sold, I'm sorry, you lost, you are never allowed to sing again. And the bodyguard is walking behind you all the time, and even if you go, la la la, they just punch you right in the face. I mean, that would be a bit much, but don't pretend you wouldn't watch. So as you can figure out, next up, it was Finn Balor versus Austin Theory, because WWE loves structuring their shows like this. And it's just a little bit weird. Like, it was good, but when it comes to the finish, you gotta go. Because they had a really good fight with Theory hitting this amazing Spanish fly, but before he went to make the pinfall, he decided, oh, I better get a selfie of this, which actually doesn't make any sense, because the selfie, or the picture, should be him doing the Spanish fly, and not him making the pin. But because he is an inexperienced asshole, he took too much time, and Finn Balor kicked out. He then just hit his comeback button, he beat Austin Theory up, he hit the coup de grace, and he got the 1, 2, 3. And honestly, the time between these two things was around about 47 seconds. And here's the thing, on the one hand, I have no problem in doing this because we did have a little bit of a story, and I suppose it does tie into the relationship between Austin Theory and Vince McMahon, where Austin Theory refuses to learn. But on the other, wouldn't it have made a lot more sense to have built this up for a pay-per-view, maybe even at day one, and had Austin Theory beat Finn Balor? Because even though WWE seems to think otherwise, Finn Balor is a big deal. I mean, if we're going to build Austin, let's build it. Get that Lego, put it together, put a premium price on it, and nerds like me will still buy it. It wasn't bad though, and there's more to this later, so the feud is not done, and that was a little bit disappointing. But in terms of a match on Raw, you got to give it up. Miz was then in the back speaking to Omos, and I like to think before we got there, he was just saying the word awesome in as many styles as possible. But it just seems like something he would do. He then legged it when AJ Styles turned up, and honestly, the foreshadowing hit. The look on Omos' face when Styles did arrive was as if he was his ex-partner who'd been harassing him with phone calls. You could just see it coming. Which is exactly what then happened on Miz TV. Why is it always Miz TV? We continue to tease issues between Miz and Maurice as well, because the first thing Miz said on his own talk show was, Maurice, I know you're on the cutting edge later, please don't drop too much personal information about our lives. And yes, it means on this episode of Raw, we had 2 talk shows, but I'll talk about it later. The other problem with this though is that both talk shows, both Miz TV and The Cutting Edge, were about people potentially breaking up, and then Omos and AJ Styles came out, which was a story about people potentially breaking up. And I know WWE loves this, but I love pizza. But am I eating it right now? No, because I can show some kind of restraint. They should probably do the same. This then took up the entire segment because Miz was all like, you two can't get along. So AJ Styles was all like, your wife hates you. But he did at one point state that he should win all the titles in WWE. I just want to say, that's a really good idea, because I think a lot of us have forgotten that AJ Styles is one of the best wrestlers ever. Short version of this is that Omos eventually interrupted and looked like he had to go for school on a Saturday, when all of a sudden the Mysterios also interrupted. That counter's going to be brilliant. And we had AJ Styles and Omos taking on the Mysterios. And for no reason at all, Omos just went, nope, I ain't gonna tag you in, AJ, sorry. So he got hit by the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. These two lost. It was even more confusing because AJ, who had just bestowed love on Omos the entire time, said, you stupid piece of trash, I hate you. And he went for the phenomenal forearm. Omos caught him and he just slammed him around the place and he walked off. So he's a babyface, I guess, and AJ Styles is the heel. Either way, next week, they're going to be having a match because we're not allowed to let anything breathe. And once again, all of this was fine. All of this was okay. It was a natural end point. But do you remember when it was Batista versus Triple H and we let that pressure cooker boil for months? I would just prefer it if we walk down that road sometime. And I really like Omos. I think he's going to do fine. Again, I think AJ Styles is terrific. But this didn't really get me super duper excited. So we got to give it a down. Also, what is the reason they broke up? I'm going to give you a second. Bowl. There isn't one. Zoom to the back where Austin Theory thought about knocking on the door of Vince McMahon but decided against it, which was really smart because that guy is just a gaslighting son of a bitch. When it was time for Randy Orton versus Chad Gable, and while Otis was at ringside, Riddle was nowhere to be seen. Obviously this clocked out super quick because last week Riddle had lost, so this week Randy Orton had to win. But because it was Randy Orton versus Gable, it was such a terrific TV match and the only reason I was feeling a little bit sad is because I wanted more. Chad basically tried too many arm drags as well, so on the last one, Randy went, oh, never mind, and gave him the RKO. But when Otis got in there to try and help his friend after he had lost, Randy Orton tried to RKO Otis, but he couldn't do it because he's so big. Now, while I do miss the lovable babyface Otis from like last year or whenever it was, I do like this version. It's like, man, I'm such a monster, you can't move me. Mostly because it actually feels like WWE is doing something with him. Going back a little bit as well, Chad Gable sold the RKO so well. How can anybody not look at this man and think, well, we do need new stars. Maybe we should push Chad. Probably because at one time we called him Shorty G. The point is up. We then continue this good guy path for Bobby Lashley because he and Umvup were in the back when MVP was all like, oh man, you can't trust Big E. It's like, look, of course I can't trust Big E, but if he even looks at me the wrong way, I'm gonna kill him. I was a bit like, Bob, you really have a problem. MVP then wanted to know whether what Bobby had done earlier by putting him in a confrontation with Big E was all part of a big plan. But Bobby Lashley kind of blew him off and said, listen, I'm thirsty. Why don't you go get me a water? And fair play to him, MVP did. So when we do take our time with this, again, Triple H, Batista, let's plant those seeds and let it grow. And if you could come up with a story to keep MVP and Bob together, I'd appreciate it. But I really do think we are going to turn him good guy. And I am right behind that. Do it. Do it. We then got another 24/7 title skit after this. What the flub is happening? So I'm just going to recount it for you as I always do, because Reggie had taken Dana Brooke to a Christmas tree park, and Dana reacted to this like it was the greatest thing she had ever seen, and that nobody had ever come to such a place before. Giselle was then dressed like an elf when Tamina, what's that, hey, there's nobody mean, had turned up and started fighting Dana Brooke, and I looked around like, have I just taken a bunch of drugs? R-Truth was then dressed as Santa Claus as Tamina and Dana Brooke started fighting in between these fairy lights, meaning you could barely see it, and as soon as Reggie and Dana could run away, they jumped over this bench, which was sold like they just jumped over a mountain. I mean, honestly, there was no point to it. It'd be like, now we just go, Merp. You're like, what did you do it for? And I'd be like, I don't know. So you do have to go and see this. And it's so bad. It's so bad that somehow it's entertaining. But if you had never watched wrestling before, this was the first thing you'd see, you'd be like, I don't want to be a fan of this, because none of it makes any sense, and that's why you got to give it a down. I mean, you'd probably go, man, I'm going to die 7 days later. That was definitely the wrestling equivalent of the Ring tape. Why did I ever watch it? Dolph Ziggler then beat Damian Priest, give it a beat, give it a beat, give it a beat, via countout. Now, this made absolutely no sense either, because one, it was a non-title match, so why couldn't Dolph Ziggler just have won? But also two, Damian Priest for ages has been going, hey man, who wants an open challenge? And for some reason now Dolph Ziggler didn't have an open challenge for that title and had to earn a shot at the title. You can't just do this stuff because, again, in terms of the story, it don't connect. It's also starting to struggle because Damian Priest needs a proper feud for that US Championship, and basically what happened when he was on the outside, Bobby Roode attacked him, that turned him into Bad Damo, or whoever the hell it was, and because he was so interested in beating the crap out of Bobby Roode, he totally forgot he was in a match, and yes, got counted out. The commentator sold this as, oh my gosh, Dolphy Ziggles is now going to get a title shot, but that's the equivalent of you passing a test because you were able to write your name after your teachers had gone to your parents. Look, we know he's struggling, so if he can just put his name on a piece of paper, we will give him a C-. And then you look at it and it says, Simo Milra. I'm not saying that happened to me. I'm just letting you know that is what it felt like, and let's get it down. Finn Balor was then telling us that he had beaten Austin Theory, so it was time to move on to new things. When, of course, Austin Theory attacked him and threw him into a box-like structure. And really, we do have to stop doing this because it was exactly the same as Bianca, Belair, and Dewdrop. It's like somebody gets a definitive win, but then there's just some kind of attack, so we've got to do it again. You could come up with whatever you want to in pro wrestling, so maybe you should do just that. And I know what's going to happen. There'll be shenanigans on next week's Raw when they are fighting, and then on day one pay-per-view, Austin Theory will finally win. But then, you will have had so much madness before it, it'll mean nothing. That's also true for what's followed, because McMahon and Austin Theory finally did sit down with each other, and I couldn't really make heads and tails out of any of this because you couldn't hear half of it. But essentially what happened is that Vince McMahon used his pencil and the razor blew it into Austin Theory's face because, again, he has the power. He talked about that last week. I'm not saying that he's He-Man, and he made all this Finn Balor stuff. All I am going to do is give it a down because during this period, Vince McMahon also joked about how much he loved firing people. And I was like, read the room, pal. Read the room. Also, this was actually gibberish. So if you sat down and did write it on a piece of paper, you may as well have just gone potato, potato. It would have made as much sense. And then it was talk show 2 for the evening. You know the rules. Because yes, welcome to my own talk show that we only do when WWE doubles up on the talk shows with me, and it's called Simon Says with the puppet version of Simon. And then I say, Simon, puppet version, how are you today? And he says,
I hate you absolute piece of shit.
I mean, that was unnecessary. And why do you have a moustache on? I mean, what is the point?
Fab you.
I hate that puppet. One day he's definitely going to kill me. But yes, WWE felt the need to just theme up Raw with talk shows this week, and it was Maurice on the cutting edge with Edge. And Maurice just went, oh my gosh, I'm a mother, and I got all these responsibilities. Who would have taken care of my kids if I had gotten hurt last week? And this is a perfectly valid point until you remember that the incident that she's talking about is when Miz or Edge almost accidentally bumped into her. Now, I understand things can go bad, but really, the worst that can come out of that situation is you've got like a bruised tum-tum. I think you're going to be all right. Maurice then asked if Edge would ever do this to his wife, Beth Phoenix, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because she's absolutely going to get involved in this feud, probably next week or in the new year. And Edge was all like, I'm a smart babyface, I'm not buying this. This is just a trick so that Miz can attack me. Now, he was absolutely right. But then the Miz's music played, and I was like, this is the worst sneak attack ever. You're going to play your music, and even though Edge did know it's coming, he still got laid out by the skull-crushing finale. So I sat there and I thought about it. I went, yeah, none of that was absolutely necessary at all. This is like walking to Australia after somebody offers you a flight. It's like, what are you even doing down? WWE does know what they're doing, though, when it comes to Veer now, because I can just smell it. They've seen the memes, and they've seen idiots like me taking the mick out of it, because we had another video, and then just go look at their social media account. They have become self-aware, and they've ruined all my fun, or at least that's what they're going to try to do, but they can't. Because I am happy to introduce to you the big question that we shall ask every single week on Raw, which of course is, did Veer make it to Raw? Drum roll, please. The answer is no. Of course he didn't make it to Raw. That man is definitely lost. And what we really need is videos of him frantically appear at arenas being like, oh my gosh. And again, he's either at the wrong one or he missed bell time and he missed the entire show. So he comes back out when it's night time. He's like, well, I guess I get back in my car. But as I said last week, if WWE are going to keep doing this and ruining Veer, because there's no way he can live up to all of these hours and months and weeks of vignettes, I'm going to give it a down. Rhea Ripley then beat Queen Zelina in 2 minutes. So it's everything we don't like about WWE, or Raw, should I say. It's 50-50 booking, it's rematches. I mean, this couldn't have gone more than a minute. And she just hit the riptide and she got the victory. Down. There's nothing else to say here other than the fact the story is that because Nikki Ash was banned from ringside, Rhea Ripley was easily able to win the thing. So it's just more Nikki Ash's crap, Nikki Ash's rubbish, and I will take back every single word I'm saying right now if we do turn Nikki Ash heel. But I've been let down so many times, I just can't believe it anymore. We had a promo with Big E after this, and before he could say much of anything, he was interrupted, so I was very excited about next year again. But it was more teasing, because he was all like Bobby Lashley, who did the interrupting. You should leave MVP in the back, and Bob was like, okay, I'll do it. And you know that WWE is just going to rush through it, but at least I'm enjoying it for what it is. Liv Morgan was then out to cut a promo, and if you had been a keen watcher of social media this week, you will have seen this, I suppose, cinematic attack she did at Becky Lynch's training center, and they decided to show this on Raw, and I have so many questions. Because while I did appreciate the execution, it was very strange, because who the hell was filming and editing it like this? But also, even though it was Liv Morgan doing the sneak attack, none of Becky Lynch's students let Becky Lynch know, oh my gosh, Liv Morgan's in the ring, she's going to hit you with a kendo stick. And then when Liv Morgan did attack Becky Lynch, it turned out not to be Becky Lynch, and it was a student, stay with me, that Becky Lynch had dressed up. Becky Lynch then became Batman, and she just appeared before Liv Morgan, and then she tried to whip Liv Morgan's ass, but eventually Liv Morgan whipped her ass. But as soon as Becky Lynch was out of the ring, Liv Morgan just stopped. So she flown all the way to Iowa, wherever the hell this was meant to be, and as soon as she hit the outside, she went, well, I guess my work is done. Even though all she had done is hit with like 2 kendo stick shots. I ain't get it. This is when Becky interrupted, because of course she did. And the real problem with this feud is that when Liv Morgan is talking, she comes across like a heel, and when Becky Lynch is talking, she comes across like a face. So of course we've utterly switched these roles for reasons I'm never going to be able to tell you. Otherwise, this was the usual stuff of Becky Lynch saying, oh, you're never going to be champ, and Liv Morgan said, I'm going to be champ, when she had the kendo stick in the ring, and she just threw it at Becky Lynch like, well, I brought this out here for you. And I was like, Liv, even if that is what you did, it was really, really stupid. Becky then said she had a private jet waiting for her, so she just did the shrug emoji, and she left. I think the big problem with all of this is none of it made me want to see a rematch. Again, if you had done it the other way around, and the hero was the villain was the hero, I think I'd be far more invested. But that's not the case. I thought this was overly long, and it's getting it down. It was our lead-in for our main event, though, which was Big E teaming up with Bobby Lashley, taking on Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, with the big question of, oh my gosh, can they coexist? Well, I'm very happy we have decided to build Raw around these four men, because I think they're tremendous. As ever, we made sure Lashley was an absolute beast, because in the early going, he was murking everyone. But when Seth and Kevin started to work together, they did beat him up enough that he had to make the tag to Big E. And that was kind of important because they were working as a cohesive unit, so for the time being, they were able to coexist. Then Rollins and Owens got back in control when they were beating everybody up, you know, the standard way. It didn't work all that well because when Bob got the tag back in, he was running wild again. But the finish to this was really weird because he went for a spear, missed, and accidentally took out Big E. It's like, oh no, how are they going to coexist now? So you would think, well, that little error will allow Seth and Kevin to win, but Owens went for the stunner, and Bobby Lashley just went, nah, brah, and he speared him, and he got the 1, 2, 3. Because honestly, he just shrugged this off like he forgot to pick up his laundry that day, although I suppose it did tie into the ending of the show, because Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens were so mad, they attacked both of them, and then they got the steel steps, and they curb stomped Bobby Lashley's head into it. And by Jove, I do believe that was done, so we have some sympathy for brand new babyface Bob L. It meant that when Raw did go off the air, we thought Bobby Lashley was dead, but there was also this wonderful moment when Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins hugged. But because they're such dick characters, you were like, well, they actually could attack each other too. So again, while there is still a lot of nonsense on Raw, when you have people of this caliber and the story's going left and it's going right and it's going up and it's going down, and it's making me want to see that day one pay-per-view, especially because now it could be like a pseudo tag team match, overall, I'm actually going to give Raw an up. Again, it is full of shenanigans, but I was sports entertained. Now, please do leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about last night's episode of Raw, and hello to the Simon is Biased crew. I love the fact you come back every single week. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com where you can read articles about Raw and read the article ups and downs. I don't write it, so you can get more opinions. Make sure you come follow us on social media, and we got a ton of other videos. Make sure you watch them. My name is Simon WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always, and I will see you up to Christmas. And then I'll see you on Christmas, and then I'll see you the week after that, because for some reason, wrestling never ends.